Hi, Steffon. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Casey. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for taking time to talk with us today. We're pretty pumped about this conversation with the October Slump and seeing how and what our teachers can do to help kind of mitigate stressors happening, particularly this month.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to offering some wisdom and intellect around the issue, around my experience. So I'm glad to be here.
Thanks. Hey, do you mind starting by telling us a little bit about your work and connection to education?
Yeah, my life was changed by an educator, and so I've always had a passion for education. I was adopted by a teacher in high school, and that's always had a pretty cool impact on my life because it was beyond the subject matter they were teaching. They came to school with a level of compassion. They came to school with a level of love, and it ended up changing my life and sending me on this trajectory. So education and educators are very important to me. In the world of mental health, my life has been impacted greatly by mental health. And so I want to be a champion for mental health for people, particularly educators and all individuals in the KC metro area. But I just really have a passion to help people live a life worth living and reduce the unnecessary suffering of mental health conditions that really interfere with people functioning to their optimal level in society.
Absolutely. I love that it's so personal for you, that it's your mother that drove you to this work and that you have found your own path and space and purpose and still like keep roots in that like personal story and connection there. How did you get connected with Kansas City Teacher Residency?
KCTR, I forget the referral, but someone made a referral. I had a previous coworker that started working at KCTR and thought I would be a good candidate to come speak to KCTR about trauma-informed teaching, is what I called it at that time. Right. And Mr. King was open to having someone come in to speak to his leadership about being trauma-informed and sensitive to the residents and the staff. And it was a great workshop that happened about 5 years or more. And from that day, it's just been a partnership of really just doing what I can to serve KCTR and my imperfections and expertise to really help them be more trauma-informed as an organization. So we can have more trauma-informed teachers and educational leaders as well at organizations like KCTR. So it's been fun.
On my end too, I have enjoyed working with you, and it's like this very reverberation impact, right? Like you just watch, like if we as educators work on ourselves, then our impact is just multiplicitous, right? That if we're willing to kind of go into our internal self and do hard work sometimes, and sometimes it's maintenance work, but if we're able to do that, then our students benefit, and then the next year students, and before long you're to thousands of students.
Absolutely.
Yes, that is exactly from our perspective at KCTR, the perspective of highlighting and prioritizing self-care, and your connection with our work, and in a few different capacities, whether that's taking on some of our teachers as clients in your therapy practice, or coming in talking about stereotype threat in our testing environments. It has mattered a lot to us. I would love to hear, since you have worked with so many of our teachers, but teachers in general, I know you've worked in the education system as well. I would love to hear, like, what kind of key struggle or like key barrier do you see in place with teachers that keeps them from like living that like best purpose?
Yeah, that's a great question, Casey. I think the first thing that I see precisely is what I call the loads of responsibility. We all have to do laundry each day. And if you don't get your loads right, you are going to invite distress into your life. So the loads of responsibility have to be appropriately loaded, or you're going to just be overwhelmed and enter a state of anxiety, depression, or even worse, envy, jealousy, bitterness, resentment for whatever reason. And some of these loads for that I have seen is you have someone who has a very difficult family situation that they have going on, but they're not really allowing that situation to really take the priority that it needs, because they've been invited to be a part of the culture committee, or they've been invited to be part of the test planning committee, or they've been invited to, they've been challenged to take more challenging students. And so you have all of these loads of responsibility. Just imagine a bunch of laundry baskets surrounding people. And this laundry basket is your parents that you want to be responsible to. The next laundry basket is your marriage or your relationship that you want to be responsible to. Then the next basket is your students that are challenging. Then the next basket is a corporate culture or school culture. Then the next basket is a school, a church committee and then a neighborhood group that you're in charge of. Guess what I haven't mentioned? Your own children and your own health. And so those responsibilities can just take up your time, and you're sorting, washing, folding the same loads over and over again. Then you start to get overwhelmed, and then your anxiety starts to increase. Your depression symptoms starts to increase because you know you are neglecting appropriate loads of responsibility. And so one of the first things that I see daily working with educators and a lot of people is they don't get the proper loads right. They're not precise enough in what they are truly responsible for. In different seasons of life right now, with Thanksgiving coming up, Christmas coming up, okay, if you decide to do Thanksgiving dinner, make sure you can handle that responsibility, or it's just going to invite stress, it's just going to invite depression, and you're not going to enjoy anything because you're overloaded. And that's why I try to challenge people to take responsibility for your mental health. Get up 1 hour early, if you can, to do that.
And I'm hearing like so many layers here, first of all, that I can personally relate to. And then because naturally educators tend to have a little bit larger of a proverbial plate, or maybe more laundry baskets in that same analogy, right? And so we think that we need to fill them all to the brim, rather than saying, I guess I could fill 8 laundry baskets, but I'm going to fill 5. And I'm going to let that be. And instead of filling up the other 3, I'm going to make sure that I prioritize that space for my kids, for my walk every day, for my meditation, mindfulness, prayer practice. And so not only do we have this tendency to take on more responsibility, but when we take on more responsibility, we fill all our proverbial laundry baskets. When we probably should leave a few empty, we end up worse off, right? Like we're not as confident in showing up and being able to be fully present in each of these spaces. We are oftentimes like higher. Some people experience it as stress, others experience it as anxiety. And so, yeah, this like overload has impact internally, which then goes back out into those other buckets. Is that kind of what I'm hearing here?
Absolutely. You are hitting it on the head, Casey. You definitely should go ahead and get licensed and take over the profession. You say it much better than I do, but yes.
Oh no, I don't know about that.
It's what I'm saying. It's yes. These baskets, and the thing is, it's all good stuff. Right. Like I have to be careful when I wake up as a helping profession. I do the same routine pretty much every morning. I put on my playlist for inspiration. That playlist grounds me. I take a good shower. I put on my favorite stuff, my favorite clothes. I put on my favorite stuff. I pray, do my devotional, and then I see what the day is about. And I have to do that. All the texts are ignored. All the emails are ignored. Everything is ignored. Everyone in my tribe understands I'm not going to be obligated to get back with you immediately. Everyone knows that. And because we have to recognize, teachers have to recognize, educators have to recognize, do not live in the fog. The fog of life is fear, obligation, and guilt. You're doing things that are not genuine. You're doing things out of fear of saying no. You're feeling obligated to do things because you did it last year. You're feeling guilt because you feel like you're capable of doing something no one else would do it, so you step to do it. But when you live in the fog, you don't have a clear purpose and vision for life. And helping professionals can really live in the fog. Good people often live in the fog. A lot of beautiful people live in the fog of fear, obligation, and guilt because they're afraid of saying no to responsibilities that are awesome and good, but should not be prioritized in a certain season of life.
Yes. Okay. I love some key ideas I'm like hearing here. Number one, the seasons, right? We know in education, that is absolutely our life. Summer season tends to be a little lighter, right? Going into the school year, we end up with a pretty like enthusiastic season most of the times. And the current season we're in is usually pretty heavy. We have got to know our students. We love them deeply, which causes us to feel a lot of responsibility for them. And that work could never end because of that obligation and guilt that could drive it, right? But when we're able to prioritize, not only ourselves, which I want to talk more about, but also what buckets we're filling. So when I'm working with students and deciding how I spend my work time outside of the classroom, I am prioritizing things that directly impact my students, right? And honoring like the place that I work, right? And so, but the idea that we will be able to have all the little bows tied up at the end of the day or the end of the week is not realistic. So I hear this push not only to prioritize ourselves, which we find all sorts of cultural tension with, we find like internal tension with, practical tension with, but then also in the things that we're investing in, only investing in the things that have the highest impact and that align most with like our purpose and drive.
Absolutely. Yeah, that value alignment, because if not, the goal is, it's not cookie cutter approach, but when I wake up each day, how do I live a life worth living as an educator? So if you ask yourself that, and what am I give that is going to align with being consistent, being cooperative, being humble, being gracious, being compassionate, because a lot of those character traits start to deteriorate when you take on the wrong responsibilities. So you think you're doing a good job. No, you've taken on a huge project at work or at school. Now you're overwhelmed. Now your character starts to deteriorate because you're not as loving, kind, or compassionate as you want to be. So value alignment is great. And yet you could spend your study period with a student if that's what's going to help you live a life worth living and help you feel connected and help you flex that compassion muscle. That's fine. So I'm not saying like this, oh, it's all about you. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying your values, my value is service. So I love to use my values all the time: service, compassion, research, education. And I live out those values each day. So there's value alignment. So the things I do falls along with those values. And then sometimes, most of the time, giving back to other people, but that's how I live a life worth living. I don't like isolation. I don't promote isolation, but there's sometimes it's needed. I go on hikes and I go camping for rejuvenation and retreat. But your values have to be aligned properly through each season in life and prioritized properly. If not, you'll be picking up loads that you have no business picking up.
And that takes work. It takes
a lot of work.
It's like wake up and like align with the values,
it takes
right?
A lot of
like absolutely. So that's like everything down to like really looking and taking a analysis, look at your calendar and your family's calendar,
absolutely.
Your responsibilities in general, like naming those buckets for yourself, and then naming your values for yourself, and asking the hard questions of what matches, what doesn't, and how do I extricate myself from the things that don't match, right? Absolutely. And I also hear like this, like when you're stressed and overwhelmed, you lose sight of your values and your character. So I know for myself, I like this like Enneagram concept, and they talk a lot about this. Like you have this like core to your being, and in stress, you tend to like walk a little bit away from that and kind of disintegrate to this other version of yourself. And the same goes when you're healthy. You thrive in that like walking towards that best version of yourself. I would love to hear. I've heard you mention like a few strategies here for this kind of almost, it feels a little vague or like slippery concept um, of aligning your responsibility to A, be an appropriate amount, and B, aligned with your values. We've talked about how like that's seasonal. We've talked about how that takes work. And so when you're talking about that work, I've heard a few kind of things come up that I would love to hear more about. First, I've heard you name this value thing. And what are some ways or some strategies that people, or places, maybe even like therapy or spaces that people could find time to process what their values are?
Yeah, I take people on an exercise. It's a simple exercise. It's a simple question. The question is, how are you spending your money? And you take a look at how you spend your money for the past 30 days, precisely. And you categorize your money. Then you take a look at your calendar for the past 30 days and you write down categorize what you've been doing. Then you take a look at your text messages for the last 30 days and you see who's been taking your time, and you take a look at your call log and you see who's gotten most of your time, because your time plus your money plus your energy plus your resources equals what you value. And I've done this with tons of people. And I had a client who at one point came back very distraught because they said, wow, I value a lot of Netflix and buying clothes. And I said, it's why the activity is awesome, because it really shows you what you think you value. I worked with inmates in solitary confinement, and these guys thought they valued family. They thought they had all these cool values. They thought they valued respect, but it took about a year to help them understand, no, you don't value any of that stuff. What you value is what other people think of you more than anything else. And that's what dominates your time and energy and resources. And so the value alignment is simply equation. Your time plus your money plus your resources plus your energy equals what you value. So the goal is to evaluate that. And when you really do that, you kind of take a step back and say, wow, I might need to come home and turn off the TV, like unplug the TV or cut the TV, or I might need to like really find a basket to put my phone in, because we're valuing things that are not producing these optimal feelings of a life worth living. And value the right things, takes discipline. It takes a lot of discipline, and it feels selfish.
That's right.
But the goal is, I want to wake up and live a life worth living, being authentic to myself. Yes. So I can't value what you want me to value. It has to align with what I value. This aligns with what I value. So this is excellent time, energy, and resources worth spending. This helps me live a life worth living. This is my life's work. Now, if I'm at some political campaign trying to motivate people, that's not a conversation I want to enjoy. That does not help me live a life worth living. Or spending my time reading the news. I haven't watched the news in years, over 10 plus years, and I don't pay attention to news. I've never have, after being challenged by some of my favorite psychologists, because valuing those things have not equated to a life worth living. So you have to really align yourself with, what am I doing? What am I spending my money on? And everyone needs to do that, because they'll reveal what you truly value as opposed to what you want to value. You think you're valuing students, you think you're valuing your parents' health, you think you're valuing responsibility, but really a lot of people in the helping profession is valuing people pleasing and not being rejected by those who they're afraid to stand up to say no.
I am resonated with this on so many levels. First of all, I'm thinking about my own personal audit, looking back on my calendar, or forward on my calendar this weekend, spending time with family tonight, going to help a friend move tomorrow, like, where am I putting my time? How do I spend my time in my evenings? I am like guilty as charged with Netflix and chill with my husband. Absolutely. And asking those hard questions, on like, is that actual connection? Is it not? And when is it okay to Netflix and chill? And then when is it okay
Yes.
to say, because 90% of my time aligns with my values, I don't have to stress
Right.
about the little things. But it goes back to that precision, that audit that you do in
Right.
order to find some precision there. I'm also making a connection in the classroom and thinking about like how teachers have to be auditors of their classroom time and moments with students, and they have to be pretty severe auditors because there's a lot of pressure, and whether it's like to be on pace with curriculum, to do an assessment on a certain day, to make sure that you've hit learning targets. And I'm thinking about how we can implement some of these strategies as we audit our lessons throughout our day, right? So if we have some space carved out for a do now, one of the values you might hold as a class is connection. So maybe that do now is a practice of gratitude, or a practice of a brain dump journal, or so these ways that you can, or in elementary world, that might be like a morning meeting, align your time, even if it's finite, precisely to align with some values you have for your classroom and your shared values you've developed with your students. I just think that's such a great conversation, again, personally, looking at time, money, energy, and then in the classroom, time being the trump card there, looking at how I'm spending my time, how I'm planning my lessons in order to align with what I personally value as an educator caring for my kids.
Yes.
And then also what our students, like, in order to like build this culture together, what we have all named as value there. I'm making tons of connection. One thing I know we've talked about before is this key idea of mastering a morning routine as a way to kind of audit your time, right? It's like almost like a little hack of time auditing to make sure you're like prioritizing the things that you want to prioritize, and it's routinized. So it's not something you have to like think about after that first 30 days. This is just what you do. Can you talk a little bit more about what, I know you mentioned what it looks like for you, but like some high leverage things that you've also seen work in a morning routine?
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate goal is alignment, and assessing kind of where you're at. The temptation is you tend to go, then crash and burn. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that can be predicted. And people, I say, throw the capes away and just keep one, right?
Talk to my teachers, talk to myself. That is absolutely right.
And educators have like the best frameworks to actually have like execute at a high level in life, believe it or not. Because curriculum, I love curriculum. It's, you have a goal and it's usually 1 to 3 precise aims. So here's the daily aim. And I like to make it a more emotional question. What would be really cool to accomplish today? And what are the 1 to 3 things that is be really cool to get done today? Mm-hmm. And using that as a personal and professional kind of motivational question to really align with what you value, because that question usually brings out like what you truly value. And it brings out sometimes some reach goals, target goals, safe goals, reach goals. And so a lot of times the morning routine is like a curriculum. It's like, well, here's the 3 things. So with all that being said, what are the 1, 2, or 3 things that'd be really cool to do every morning? Mm-hmm. For myself, it's take a good shower, have some good time in prayer, and plan. It's simple. Now, for you, if it's a nice cup of coffee, it's a nice cup of tea, like whatever, what are the 3 things that'd be really cool that I did each morning? And start with there. That would help you live a life worth living and help you align with your values. And what that does research wise is structure and routine helps the brain feel safe. So chaos is bad for all of us. It's too much chaos. That's why bedtime routines are so important. My daughter is she's 12, and I went to pick her up earlier this week, and her students was laughing at her. Her classmates, they said, "You go to bed at 8:30 and you sit in the back seat," and we both just started laughing. But I'm like, that's just kind of how it's been for her. And she does it on her own. She gets herself to sleep, and she gets up in the morning. And believe it or not, this 12-year-old gets up every morning on her own. She has her stuff laid out the night before. She is at the breakfast table. She's doing her devotion, and that's on her own. That's been her own doing, whether it's through modeling or whatever. But that's her own doing, believe it or not. But it's been safety for her. It's been structure for her. That's so right. Routines, structure, rituals, traditions help us feel safe. It helps us feel like some sense of control, because you can only really control three main things in life. And that's how you do your craft, your body transformation, and how you think. And a lot of times people operate outside of what they can control. And so what you can control is getting yourself out of bed in the morning on most days and doing 1 to 3 things that are going to help you feel like you are living life, executing at life, and fulfilling some things you want to accomplish in life. That is going to make you be a better teacher or better parent or better coworker, because your morning routine is something you're confident about. And a lot of times people don't understand that the confidence of not executing morning routine leads over to the confidence of not accomplishing other goals in your life.
Generalizes. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm thinking through like this audit that we talked about and how that like enlightens what our values are currently. And then that shift, and one way to make that shift to where we want them to be is the values kind of act as our learning target, if you will, if you're putting it in like a curriculum context.
Call them anchors to the sea.
Yes.
The
so
waves,
they act as anchor.
Yeah, you'll never stop the waves of life, right? The waves of life are constant 24/7, but the values are like anchors. They don't keep the boat steady, precisely still, but they keep it somewhat stable.
Balanced. Yeah, I hear that. And then this morning routine aligned with those values after we've kind of figured out where we want to shift can really help put skin to them, right? Like feet to the ground, if you will, like personify them. Right. And also help create psychological safety and that starting your day with that safety. I know I feel that way at bed at night. Like going to bed at night, I feel like, it's a safe place to, because I have my routine that I go through there. I have my morning routine. And I have thought about, actually, since the conversation with you, I have made shifts there. Our morning at my house is a family responsibilities before I leave work, but I can control the commute. And so I've taken on that commute and really committed it to align with some practices that align with my values and who I want to be. And I love that this like rubber to the road, right? Like a morning routine, it's hard, but then it's not, right? Then it's hard. And then it becomes like this anchor, this safety measure that helps keep the waves manageable, if you will.
Right. That's
absolutely
right. There's a term that came up. The goal, Casey, is all of this is to master psychological self-soothing skills. And that's the goal. Like that's the ultimate goal each day, is that regardless of what the day brings at you, you have set up an environment and a lifestyle, habits, rituals to utilize some self-soothing skills so that you're not always dysregulated. You're not always taking the bait of life and just going all over the place and being a mess, right? You are really conducting yourself in a way that, you know what, that's not my responsibility. I'm here to tell you guys, you're not responsible for the, emotions of your principal. You're not responsible for the emotions of your mom. You're not responsible for the emotions of your children, to put it bluntly. Those are responsibilities that if you keep on taking on those responsibilities, you won't prioritize the right buckets, the right baskets, the right laundry that you need to complete. You can't wash every single item at once. Sometimes, you know what? I just grab what I need for the next day, throw it in the wash and get it over with, because you're stressing yourself out with trying to be this perfectionistic, overachieving, awesome human being all the time. Get over it. Perfection is pathology and perfection is an illusion. I love high standards. I love executing at a high level. I love deep thinking. I love high execution. But at the end of the day, sometimes the perfection that we're after or seeking doesn't leave room for the great mercy and grace that I feel is needed in order to live a life worth living with people and yourself.
That's right. That is right. And I'm thinking about like how practical this is, right? This idea of like living a life worth living and like having purpose and values, it kind of lives in this like upper atmosphere sometimes. But what I've heard today has been like some really key news for our teachers, auditing their time personally and in their classroom. I've heard this idea of the routinizing some morning and evening routines, including like assessing cell phone use and all of that, in order to create psychological safety, right? When you've put those two like things into action personally and in your classroom, you're then creating psychological safety for yourself and promoting it for your students. While we know we cannot control that for others, we can model it, right? Right. I know those are some key skills, that self-soothing stuff that I've just needed this week. I had an incident that kind of sent me in a tizzy, and I really had to get back to these basic things. Sometimes those psychological self-soothing things are called self-care, right. And I think that word can be hijacked sometimes to talk about spa days or something, but it doesn't have to go that way. This is that psychological self-soothing is another word for it, isn't it? Like that right. In your body and supporting that healthy serotonin production in your brain with eating at a regular basis. I'm telling you, I've drank my water in this thing because that was something that I wasn't doing and I paid for it. So, and it doesn't work right away. Once I've been thrown off kilter, these don't work right away. They work because they're a routine and pattern. They work cumulatively, little by little by little.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, this stuff matters so much. You were about to say something else.
No, it's in the book. There's a few books on habit, and it says our current results in life is the result of millions of decisions we've made along different values. And so, you could take any metric or domain in life and say your blood pressure, your debt score, your waistline, your credit score, whatever. And that's a result of tons of decisions, some with tragedy and some with unexpected, things that happen. But most of it is usually some intentionality or unintentionality, subconsciously, of our habits. And the discipline of life, life is very disciplined, but I say life is more disciplined than we want it to be and more lonely than we want it to be. So what do we do with those two things, right? We sometimes want this fun or this feel good. And it's like, no, you create that. You can create to it an attitude. You can cultivate an attitude of gratefulness by being grateful each day. And a lot of times I'm trying to convince clients of that. It's creating an attitude that's going to help you execute a mission and vision that you have created. And it's not for the rich. It's not for the privileged. It's for everyone. And no one taught me this stuff. Hundreds of books helped me come to this place, but I'm ready for my legacy. I'm ready for my eulogy because I've found out that purpose. And that's what keeps me grounded each day. It keeps me grounded and just do this, because you can't have it all and you can't do it all. You can't visit every national park this year. You can't visit every campground this year. So come on, friends, just choose something you think you will enjoy in the morning, in the day, in the evening, and go after it. And if you get there, you get there. But a lot of times we overwhelm ourselves with this life of fun and life of relaxation and pleasure and indulgence. And it just distracts us from really, truly picking up the right basket. Because there is a season where we just need to take care of our parents, and that's okay. And there's a season that we just need to take care of our finances, and that's okay. And with all of that, when you cling to values, when you embrace different values, you're saying yes to the right thing and no to the wrong things. If you need to repair a marriage, you have to say no to a whole lot of things. You need to repair a relationship with a kid, you have to say no to a lot of things. You need to repair relationships at work. You need to say no to a lot of things, and you got to be comfortable with that no, because you know you're valuing the right things during that time and season of life.
I hear you kind of hitting on this idea of like it's like a cultural, I would propose, myth of good vibes only, like that's not reality. But we can create our own,
That's
right?
right.
And that's what I hear you saying in our aligning, figuring out what our values are, figuring out what we want them to be, and aligning
Right.
some routines with that we can. Those seasons, brutal, like they absolutely will come. That's a given. That's absolutely true. And good vibe only our way out of that through escapism or self-indulgence
That's right.
isn't the solution, but instead it's this cumulative effect of building our own routines and rhythms to align with our values, which ultimately creates some buffer for when those things come to play.
Imagine walking down a hallway, 10 doors on the left, 10 doors on the right. At each door, there's someone at the door. You wake up in the morning and the first door says Instagram, 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 Instagram. The second door says Facebook, 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 Facebook. The third door says KCTR, KCTR, KCTR. The fourth book says bank account, bank account, bank account, bank account. The fifth door says mama, mama. And all these doors, what I tell clients, they're vibrations. And if you wake up in the morning, you have to be careful which vibrations you activate. Because if you walk into that Instagram door, you're stepping into a world of vibrations that's going to take you up or down. Mm-hmm. If you walk into that mom door, it's going to be a world of vibrations that take you up and down. I'm not into like vibrations and frequency, but I like using it for this analogy. That energy, you have to be careful of the energy of entering any of those doors, whether you're opening up email, stepping into the door of emails, stepping into the door of the next week's projects, whatever door you step into for that morning routine, you better be careful, because you're going to come out of that room changed, because those vibration frequencies going to impact you. Those scrolling, those images are going to impact you more than you realize. That's why you have to set yourself up with what are the 3 doors that I walk into each morning, no matter what. So when I come out those doors, I'm ready for the different vibrations of the world, because you can't respond to everyone and everything, because that's just taking the bait of life and you're going to be a mess.
That's right. That's right. Gosh, this is such good stuff. I'm so grateful for, I always like walk away with another, like, oh my gosh, I got to go do this thing and this is no exception. I'm so impacted by your work, your conversations, this one included, and I know that others will be too. I'm really grateful for you taking this time and space and energy for this time today.
It's been an honor, and it's always a pleasure to serve.
Awesome. Hey, will you quickly share your contact information for folks if they want to do some of this value alignment with you in particular?
Yeah, my email is my first name, Steffon S with the S at the end, at onenewstep.com. And then my website is onenewstep.com. And the idea is we got to go in a different direction. It just takes with one step in that new direction. As in most people can change their life with just getting their phone number changed. That's one step in the right direction that has so much impact. that you can start recreating your contact list, which is one of the best things I've ever done. And I've done it more than once in my life. So my number for my work is 816-888-1727. And I see how I can serve people there. But that's kind of how you get a hold of me. I have an Instagram at One New Step KC, and I don't put much on there, but I haven't invested a lot of time into that, but I will one day. Maybe.
You can post this on there.
But yeah, but that's it. And I like serving. My ultimate goal, I exist to help people live a life worth living through meaningful relationships, meaningful conversations, meaningful activities, and a meaningful, precise purpose. And the ultimate goal is to help people reduce unnecessary suffering. There's help out there. And sometimes the best words we can say is, I need help, or I need you, whether that's a therapist or a mom or a dad. And that's the goal, is that no one's suffering in silence. We all have our own darkness, our own issues and psychological things that we have to deal with. And that's my goal in life, is to help people do that so they can live a life worth living, to inspire others, to serve others, and to really make this world a better place. And it just takes one small action to do that.
Yes, absolutely. I am on our end. I think we're going to be able to wrap this up. If there's anyone watching that wants this information, maybe didn't get a chance to write it down, you could always email me at Casey, C-A-S-E-Y, at kcteach.org. And I can also pass the information along that way too. Thank you, Steffon.
All right. Thank you, Casey. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Yes, we will. Bye.
Bye-bye.